Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. It's your host Iain.
Hello.
And Gary. And today we're joined by Geoff.
Hello.
To review 1994 movie Street Fighter. Before we talk about the movie, I think we should actually bring up the video game that actually started this franchise. Because for me, one of the first arcade machines that I ever came across walking into an arcade next to Pac-Man or Golden Axe was Street Fighter, the arcade game. And it's a sort of game that you would just throw in your coins and get beaten up and try again until you get someone that would come along and take over the second controller and whoop your ass straight back off that machine. And then it became one of those games that I'd prefer to actually just sit and watch people play. The game itself was fantastic in terms of how colourful the characters were, the backgrounds, the music, and for me, the introduction into this sort of Japanese flair of its style, of the music, of the characters, of their sort of storytelling, if you will. And it was quite captivating, and it was also the first of its kind.
Yeah, kind of like the birth of beat-em-ups in the arcade was Street Fighter. Street Fighter 2. Just to have that opening sequence where the camera goes up from the two guys fighting on the streets. You have all the different characters. You obviously Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Guile. It was a super smash.
It made beat-em-ups popular, didn't
it?
It's what took beat-em-ups from being something that was just kind of a very kind of simple mechanic into something that was a lot deeper and a lot more fun to play.
Yeah.
And Japanese obsession with such a thing like that meant that people found out all these discovered hidden depths about Street Fighter, which it was kind of became a cult thing, you know, like where you become in the know. Do you know all the moves of this character? Do you know how to defend against the moves of this character? Do you know how to do the moves in such a way that you can create combos? And became such a thing that it was really like a popular culture boon through the early 90s.
It was like learning a martial art. You know, if you were sitting down, people would be like, I'm learning karate, I'm learning jiu-jitsu, I'm learning Ken. Ken masters. I'm going to learn how to do a Shoryu Ken following in from a spinning hurricane kick and then hit him with a giant fireball. And it just escalated from there on. You know, you had your little bickering fights with Mortal Kombat and Soul Edge and Tekken, but Street Fighter was for the truly skilled.
Well, the thing is that Street Fighter for me became so oversaturated. There's like Street Fighter 2, and then there's like 30 more Street Fighter 2s.
Super Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Championship Edition.
It got to the ridiculous point where the game had so many characters and moves that you could just push a button and your character would go off and do a 75 hit combo. And I'd just be staring at the screen like, no. Street Fighter for me just went into the deep end and drowned. For me as a video game, it just doesn't have that lasting appeal that the very first two Street Fighters had in the arcade machines as they have for perhaps home consoles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always found it, like I said, it was a martial art. Only the truly skilled knew how to play it, and only the truly skilled would be able to make it into a film.
Well, Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis for Street Fighter?
So the plot follows General M.Bison, played by, I can never pronounce the name, but Raul Julia, and he has kidnapped a lot of foreign representatives, and he is holding them hostage in his hidden base with his organization Shadaloo. He has demanded $20 billion for their release, and so the Allied nations have sent in their top man, Colonel Guile, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I watched this movie at a very young age. I was very impressionable when films like this were coming out because being a fan of video games, there wasn't many video game adaptations into movies. We only just had Mario, rest in peace Bob Hoskins. And then, of course, we had Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter coming along at pretty much the same time. And I knew back then, watching Street Fighter, that it was a piece of shit. I just didn't know why.
I knew from the offset why this was a piece of shit. Having Chun-Li slapped in front of a camera as a reporter, I'm like, okay, so you've just taken one of your strongest leads and shoved her into the sideline. You've got M-Bison played by an extraordinary actor, but he's just floating around in his hover chair, you know? And then you have the ginger-haired Guile.
This film is everything that is wrong with Hollywood. You know, there's such a disconnect between the makers of this film and what the games were all about.
Definitely.
I mean, the games, I have continued to, like, play Street Fighter up into its latest incarnations. I'm not a huge fan, but I know some people that are, you know, semi-pro at it, and, you know, there was a level of depth and love for this game that continues to this day.
Yeah.
And because of that, there was these huge kind of this huge fan love went into these characters, and these huge stories began to build up around these characters, and it became really well known in Japan and America, more than it was in England. But whoever made this film didn't give a fuck about any of it. They were just like, yeah, you know, let's make a movie about the UN. Yeah, we'll call it the AN. And then they were like, what do the kids like these days? They like Street Fighter, don't they? Yeah, that'll make us some money. And that seems to be their only concern throughout the whole making of this film, is just trying to shoehorn pro-American propaganda into the framework of something that looks a bit like Street Fighter. And then they have little kind of doff caps through the film to some of the features of the characters, whilst ignoring pretty much all of the stuff that's really cool about the characters. So, I mean, yeah, this film is shit.
On all of those levels you've just mentioned, I completely agree.
Definitely.
In terms of the film's scenery, there's a few nods to the first and second game and a couple of the other second games, where, like, there's a statue in Sagat's room, which is in his stage level from the game.
Yeah.
There's other little sections and items in background, sort of Easter eggs, which you can go, that's from that person's stage. Or that's
Easter
from...
eggs in a fucking film?
Now, but my biggest complaint about the Street Fighter movie is that there are 0 street fights in the film. There are, not just that, there's not a single credible fight sequence in the entire film.
No.
There's just actors punching off camera, kicking off camera.
There are so many quick cuts.
Seconds. Like, maybe the most a fight will last is a few seconds. Yeah.
Kylie Minogue, she beats the crap out of air. There's just nothing there.
I'm going to spoil it now. If you haven't seen Street Fighter, don't. But, you know, there's a sequence towards the end where the Allied nations are rushing aboard to that beach. And it does a cut where they're running. Then it cuts to them running up the stairs. Then it kind of cuts to Zangief fighting Yonda. And then they smashes through the wall. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? The whole film, literally from the beginning, is just jump scene after jump scene after jump scene. Let's just fill this hour and a half.
The fight scene was just like 2 plastic action figures being bounced off of each other.
Not even that good. Not even that good. You shove Chun-Li as a side character, as a reporter. You have Yonda and Balrog as her assistants. Ryu and Ken are gun runners, and Ken looks like a smackhead.
What a screw up.
You've got Guile running around with ginger hair. Why the fuck has Guile got ginger hair?
Why the hell is Guile a colonel?
And why the fuck can't he even speak English properly?
That's it.
If Sagat runs against Bison, then he's got to know where Bison is hiding. All we have to do is to infiltrate someone.
I try and defend this film because of, obviously, the great performance by Bison. But then even his scenes
it's not a great performance, is it? It's just super hammy,
Yeah.
camp, I mean, it doesn't capture anything like what
But
Bison was. Bison was a badass.
He's trying to be
Not
eccentric
fucking-
and crazy, and obviously the actor,
$20 billion.
the actor at this stage was ill at the
awful.
time, and so was unable to be able to pull off a psycho crusher from flying across the screen. But you have him as the main badass, and the best you got are him and Guile giving each other shit over a camera.
Why do you address a fellow warrior with such disrespect?
Warrior, you. How many doctors and nurses have you killed this week? How many children have you orphaned?
You will choke on those words, Guile.
Anytime, bighead.
You just got this incredible disconnect as well between actors that can. I've obviously been
Act.
got in because they're supposedly actors, and then you've got some people who have come in because they're martial artists, but neither the actors nor the martial artists can act, and the martial artists can't do any real martial arts. So all the fight scenes are like, I mean, you'll have like Guile kicking at a camera a couple of times, and then it'll like cut to like the actor guy doing a really shit looking sloppy looking punch, and there'll be cut, and then somebody goes flying on clearly on wires, and the fight scenes are incredibly unconvincing all the way through, and they clearly didn't have the budget or the stunt insurance to be able to continue them
No.
for any length of time. So they're just a few seconds long, and they're almost all wedged up into the end of the film, which is meant to be this climax, which is about as climactic as being slapped in the face with a wet tea
It's the
towel.
fact that it starts off with Street Fighter, the ultimate battle. I'm like, I see that title come up, I'm just slapping myself in the face.
In fact,
like,
that's pretty much that. I spent more time slapping my forehead in this film than I did for Howard the Duck, and that is saying
Howard the
something.
Duck is a fucking masterpiece compared to Street Fighter. I mean, you have obviously Sagat as like another side character.
He's a really
arms.
great actor and a great character in the games, but it's
He
just
tried
not.
his hardest.
He did.
Yeah.
More so than any of the others, he played it like a typical villain.
Is this a joke? This money isn't worth the paper it's printed on.
On the contrary, every bison dollar will be worth 5 British pounds. For that is the exchange rate the Bank of England will set once I've kidnapped their queen.
But then you have that whole build-up of so Guile wants to infiltrate Shadowloo and capture Bison and rescue all of these people, including his friend Charlie. I have to bring up Charlie now. Charlie is tortured filled with chemicals and turned into Blanca.
By Dalsim.
By Dalsim, turned into Blanca. How the fuck somebody sat there with a piece of paper and a pen and decided to write that?
That was how it happened.
Fuck did you get?
It's quite an interesting couple of scenes in the film where, I mean, the film has like a PG rating, but
Yeah.
the footage that is being used on him over the course of 3 days is actual real life footage, and there's lots of sort of Nazi propaganda that's going on
Yeah.
in there. You see the SS troops, which also again reminds me of M.Bison with all of the hats and the uniforms that he wears. He almost seems like a more Japanese colourful SS trooper.
Yeah.
But anyway, the footage that's playing there is an actual live death or bullet to the head in that footage, and that was real. That's a real person dying.
Shit.
In that footage. I don't know whether the filmmakers were actually aware that this footage was real or not, but I found that the most interesting part of the whole transformation sequence.
But Blanca, what was the fucking point of Blanca? He literally did nothing. He
Yeah.
did nothing.
Well,
other
he
than
picked
sit-
up one guy.
He picked up a couple of guards, and then he spoke to Guile,
And he growled at the camera.
He disappeared. But that's it.
He's this huge set-up plot premise that amounts to nothing. Absolutely pointless. And Dalsim, obviously they couldn't get the budget for him to do long, stretchy arms. So the most you see of Dalsim is he gets sprayed with mutagen, and all they can do is hint at the fact that he's going to turn into some stretchy thing.
So
That was
never
always the
actually-
most disappointing thing for me because Dal Sim was my second favourite character.
Yeah.
And just
They basically, I feel, as a Street Fighter fan, they took each character and just slapped them on somebody that looked like, Cammy with Kylie Minogue, you've got T-Hawk there, what's with the bandana, T-Hawk?
Chun-Li and
You know?
Guile, you could say, well, they took some artistic, in inverted commas, license, but they were just about passable as characters. But Ken and Ryu, when they came on the screen and they were gun runners,
you were hoping to be them to be the film's heroes.
Yeah.
It showed no understanding of Ken and Ryu, no concern about their backstory or anything. It just.
Preto! Salubo! Papu!
You're like, that is so out of character. It's like they were just shitting on the characters. That's what it was like. Painful.
This film isn't even fun to talk about. I'm trying to talk about it. I'm just reliving nightmares now. I really thought when we sat down to do this film, I was just like, yeah, it's going to be fun. And then I sat down and I remembered why it's not fun. But weirdly enough, if I see another copy of Street Fighter, I'm probably going to want to watch it. I don't know why. I'm like, I want to see Bison, flying across on wires and, Ginger Guile and fucking Chun-Li doing her fucking magic. The whole magic sequence. You've got Sagat and Bison having this little meeting and selling guns. And Yonda, Balrog and Chun-Li are doing a magic sequence.
With the Capcom barrel.
Barrel. And I'm just like, this is actually a whole sequence that you're actually going to do.
No.
And then they fuck off. And then they call them back after they've pulled Ryu and Ken off and they've explained a big plot point about how they're going to blow them up. And then they roll the truck down. Oh, God, I hate that sequence.
Well, that's actually my favourite sequence in the film, Ian. It's when all of the characters are in the tent and they're watching the monitor and then they see the truck hurtling towards them and they all look out the tent and then they look back at the monitor again and Zangief just goes,
Quick! Change the channel!
It's just, it's stupid. It's
so
I mean, you
stupid.
already know at that point that the film is terrible. So to a certain level of shitty films becoming funny or entertaining still, I think Street Fighter still to some level has that appeal of being a shitty movie that is very entertaining.
Shitty movie. This is
if
like,
not disappointing.
This is like National Lampoons does Street Fighter. This is like Monty Python does Street Fighter. It's like we said, they take all the characters.
That's
and they just
discrediting
fucking
all of those.
Slap them.
It would be better off if it was done as like a satirical send-up of, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, it was the first to come out of the franchise.
Yeah.
And, established what Street Fighter was about in the minds of many unaware Americans and many unaware people all over the world,
Well, that was the thing, because the budget was only, 35 million apparently, but it made triple that and was an absolute moneymaker, despite the fact that it was a piece of shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like where they were realising that people were into computer games. And that's why you just get this sense that Hollywood, got this predatory sense that they were gonna make money if they made a film about computer game characters. And it's kind of the beginning of that kind of Hollywood beginning to take notice of computer games.
They've gone on to make, obviously,
They still haven't learned.
Well, there's
Mortal Kombat and Dead or Alive and Tekken and
There-
Doom and Resident Evil and
You-
Silent Hill. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, it
Street
used to
Fighter was
be-
like the birth, and they should have stopped.
it used to be the case that computer games got made out of successful movie franchises. These days, successful movie franchises are made off the back of successful computer games, more so than the other way round. And the computer games industry is worth many, many billions, and the movie industry is dying. But I think that this kind of thing is exactly the reason why that is happening. You know, artists put more love and care into their computer game characters, and they've got much more freedom to be able to explore the stories and plot lines and characters in a game than they do in films, because there's so many artistic restrictions. And a classic example of the fact that Hollywood has fucked so many franchises is the fact that there is a new Street Fighter series coming out. It's called Assassin's Fist, Street Fighter Assassin's Fist. You should check that out.
I also second that.
Because it's this has been crowdfunded, and the guy that's making this is a true fan of Street Fighter, and he has spent, you know, he, rather than getting funding straight away for clearly what Hollywood would know would be a money spinner, he's gone, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to make any artistic compromises, and he spent like 2 years doing things the hard, long way, getting the crowdfunding to be able to make this film, and so he could make it the way he wanted to, and that is much more by a fan, for a fan.
Well, we almost got a sequel to Street Fighter in live action form. Coming back to the role, Jean-Claude Van Damme also got the actors of Ken and Ryu and went to the studio and said, hey, we want to make Street Fighter 2. And they're like, okay, yeah. No, we're going to make The Legend of Chun-Li, but you can be in it if you want to. And of course he turned it down, and I don't know if you know, but The Legend of Chun-Li bombed pretty badly. It actually makes Street Fighter look like a masterpiece.
Let's add that one to the list.
So, what's your favourite scene, Iain?
My favourite scene is any of the M.Bison sequences. He's just crazy, over the top. One of my all-time favourites is the sequence where he's talking to Chun-Li and she's tied up. And she mentions about how Bison, when he was younger, came to her village, burnt it down, killed her family. And Bison, without even changing his emotional state, just walks out, looks at her and says,
I'm sorry. I don't remember any of it.
You don't remember?
For you, the day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday. And I'm like, oh, that's the best line in this film.
Utter villainy. Geoff, your favourite scene from Street Fighter?
Well, there was one scene that actually made me laugh. I mean, you could theoretically laugh all the way through this film because it is...
I did.
You would laugh at it constantly because it's so stupidly shit. But there was one bit where they had E Honda fighting Zangief, and they basically just kind of lock arms over the shoulders like that and walk around for a bit. That's about the extent of the fight. You have a scene where E Honda slaps Zangief a bit with a little doff cap to E Honda's move, but then for some reason they get switched to a security camera which sees them being like going through this model city that Bison has set up, which was Bisontropolis or something ridiculous. And so they're smashing this model everywhere, and then it goes into like Godzilla mode. And they have Godzilla noises going over the top. Like,
I thought that was really racist. That was a massive racial slur.
That actually made me laugh because it looked like the filmmaker was having a little chuckle to himself. But that was the only joke I shared with him. The rest of it I was just laughing at his work.
You recommend Street Fighter, Iain?
Oh, fucking hell no. I don't recommend Street Fighter. If you've seen it before, try to avoid watching it again. It's still as bad as it was. I do recommend Street Fighter, the animated movie that came out a few months after Street Fighter did. And as a manga film, it is everything you want of Street Fighter and more. But avoid the fucking Jean-Claude Van Damme one.
Geoff, do you recommend Street Fighter?
Absolutely not. I mean, there might be a case of it's so bad it's good.
No.
You know, like for some people, you might want to watch this to laugh at it. But I personally, I would not even want to grace the filmmakers, whoever made this film. I wouldn't even want to grace them with my eyes, you know, because it was so everything that's bad about filmmaking. If you want to get into Street Fighter, look up the latest film that's coming out, the latest series, Assassin's Fist. Go onto YouTube, watch the tournaments and the championships they have between the pro and semi-pro Street Fighter players, because that is like watching any sport. It's really entertaining, really good fun, and you'll get to find out what's great about Street Fighter. And you know, watch, like Iain said, watch the animes. The animes were actually pretty good, and because I think they were mostly Japanese, and so they were made again by people that love the series. But this is a piece of shit and just should not be watched.
I don't also recommend Street Fighter. I could the only people I could say would need to watch it is if your curiosity, because so many people have already said before us how terrible the movie is. Christ, IMDb has it as a 3.7. It went down in Total Film as like one of the worst movies ever made of all time. And so you have your top 100 movies and you have your worst movies, and so to actually understand why it's so bad, you have to watch it. And so that's the only way I could say to watch this film. As if you're a fan of Street Fighter, you will already be aware of it, and you've probably already given the film, you know, some of your life. and for that, you're never going to get it back. I only ever look at this film as wearing the skin of the video game. And I can equate that to Tom Green from Freddy Got Fingered wearing the skin of a deer and getting hit by a fucking car. I also say that Jean-Claude Van Damme is one of my guilty pleasures. I do actually like a couple of his movies, like Universal Soldier,
Time Cop,
or Bloodsport, or Kickboxer. Hell, I thought this Jean-Claude Van Damme movie was actually quite interesting to watch. And then when you see films like Street Fighter, you just go, yeah, your career did deserve to die. I'm sorry.
I understand better than you know.
Don't go back to Street Fighter. Like these guys have said, watch the animated films or check out the new YouTube movie that's coming soon.
Sorry I talked you into all this.
I'm sorry I listened.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.